you had told 16, 18-year-old me that I was going to be a pageant queen, not even one time, I mean a several time pageant queen and pageant coach, I would have laughed you into the ground, child. Because I was the furthest thing from that. It's so interesting because my first pageant, it was actually the Miss Black and Gold pageant for Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And it was actually a dare. I did the pageant because of a dare. A friend of mine who was a brother of that or a member of that organization, they were recruiting girls, or they were recruiting girls for the pageant. And he was like, today, one day in the caf, which is what we call the cafeteria on campus, he's like, Tania, I think you would be a really great candidate. I think you could really win. And I was just like, I don't know. I don't know. And then another guy who I was really, actually in college, well, all throughout, from middle school to college, I've always had majority male friends. And so one of my friends, a guy friend, was like, please, like, Tania can't do that. And now that is how you get my attention, right? Anybody who knows me will tell you the one way to get me to do something is tell me that I can't. Because I'll do it just to prove to you, don't speak for me. And so, Jeremy is one of my friends, and he was like, Tania, you'd be great for it, and I think you could really win. And so when my other friend said, no, you can't, I'm like, I'm gonna do it. And lo and behold, I sure did. I applied. Wasn't sure I was gonna actually get in, but I actually got in. The only challenge is that I did not own a pair of heels. Like I tell people my story all the time. Actually, I'm lying. I did own a pair of heels, but like they were kitten heels. And they were actually heels that my roommates and my friends at the time always made fun of me about. But it's so funny because that was actually, my feet and shoes have been my crowning glory, but then also my biggest insecurity my entire life because I wear a size 12. I was wearing a size 10 at 10 years old. And so having big feet and women who have big feet can sympathize or empathize with me in that until recently, they were not making a lot of shoes in our size. And when they weren't the cute or sexy ones. And so there was not a large array, if there was any at that time, of size 12 heels other than transgender stripper heels, which were not appropriate. I tried, I looked. But like male stripper heels. But anyway, so I ended up having to get my first pair of heels for my first pageant. And it's so funny. And shout out to Reggie Angelou because your girl was stressed trying to walk in them. And I never forget, and it's so amazing to see Reggie doing her thing now. But Reggie was so patient with me in the hallway, child, helping me learn these heels. I almost broke my ankles. But my friends were laughing at me like, Tania, what are you doing? But I was just so, when I'm focused and when I'm locked into winner's mode, I'm like a horse with blinders. I don't see anybody or anything but the finish line. And so I was determined to get it. And so it's always interesting to me is that, so for all of my pageants, I've been in 3, and I won all 3. But for all of my pageants, I chose to praise dance as my talent. That was something, so like I mentioned to y'all before, growing up in my household and a lot of trauma and chaos, dance was one of the things outside of soccer and other sports and being involved in like after school activities, dance was my thing. I call myself a hood ballerina because I was never in actual ballet and I was never taught actual ballet, but I did self-teach myself a lot with YouTube. And I love to praise dance. If you also know me, David's one of my favorite people in the Bible and who I relate the most to because number one, he was a gangster and a warrior and a fighter. Number two, he's just the most genuine and the realest. He wrote the entire book of Psalms, and if you have ever read the book of Psalms, he was raw and real, and I loved it. But third, David was known for praising and for dancing and not caring. He would dance in the street, and that is me, child. I would dance anywhere. And so praise dance was always my thing. And so even going into college, it was still a thing of mine. I was actually a part of I was a founding member of our praise team on campus. And so praise dance was my talent. And I remember in all of my pageants, the pageant coordinators sat me down and asked me to consider a different talent. They told me that, praise dance tended to be overdone, and those who praise dance never won. For my very first pageant, I did consider changing it. But then at the very last minute, I was like, nope, I got this. I got this. This is my talent, and God willing, if I'm going to win this thing, then I'm going to win it by being me through and through. And so I stuck with my talent. And for all of my pageants, I use the exact same song, different dance, but the same song. And that was Lean on Me by Kirk Franklin, featuring Mary J, Bono. It's a whole lot of people on that song, but Kirk Franklin, Lean on Me. And so that song meant a lot to me, if you hear the words, but also it was a song that I knew that others were familiar with, and that would resonate with the audience. And so it's interesting. And so anyway, before I get to that, so that was my talent. And so the pageant, for my very first pageant, in my first pair of heels, I won. And I'll be fully transparent in that I was so focused on just not quitting, because I'll be honest with you, halfway through the rehearsals, I was like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I wanted to prove my friend wrong, but it was so intense. They took it so seriously, and it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone. I thought about quitting a million times. I had to wear a swimsuit at the time. I was still dealing with body positivity because I was struggling with my weight. I gained that freshman 15, 20, 25. And so I was struggling with my weight. And so I was insecure with the bathing suit. All the other young women were from the South, and they had that Southern belle, and that they had natural grace and natural poise. And there was the tomboy in me like, what up? And so it pushed me so far out of my comfort zone. And so just making it to pageant day was a win for me. And so I remember when I won, and it's so funny, my mom always says, Tania, she hates the fact that all of my pictures of my winning day, I always look so surprised because I genuinely am. Because you want to win, but you never actually think you're going to win, which is so sad. That I never thought I was going to win. But I did, and it was so exciting. And so, of course, when I won, I also inherited pageant sisters with that pageant. But I was not prepared for the obligations and what it meant, especially as a freshman in college. I didn't know what it meant to be a queen, let alone a queen of a fraternity. And so I'll be very transparent. I was not their pick. I think I was the brother's pick because I was close friends with many of them. And so it was like an excuse to hang out with them more. But because I didn't fit the traditional Southern belle, Southern queen role, I know that I was not the ideal pick for our advisors and the courtiers, but it was okay. I could deal with that. However, once I got the role, I bumped heads with the advisor a lot. Primarily because she was very involved and very opinionated, and she was really big on changing me. A lot of lists of do's and don'ts, and she was very quick to let me know what I was doing and what I looked like, and we just bumped heads a lot because I was trying to hold on to my identity. And it was important for me I won being this way, and I wanted to maintain my identity and being true to me. And at that time, and even to this day, if you look at my style and my everything, I'm one of those dare to be different kind of women, and that I like to stand out, and I like that I look different from the average woman, but that was not the case. Fast forward with this story, she eventually got sick of me, and she essentially lied, and she convinced the organization to take away my crown. So my very first crown, right? My first win, my first crown, and my first pair of heels was taken from me. And at that time, and those young women, I actually had grown to like. We were all the same age, and we had already had class together. So I had grown to like them through the process. And so they genuinely felt like sisters to me. And so when everything happened, my successor was the next young lady in line. And I assumed, and again, this is just me being me and the rebel in me, once they understood and what happened, and they knew that it was a lie, because we all knew that it was a lie, I assumed that she was going to deny the crown, and out of support for me and defend me. But she didn't. She took it, and she got to, and mind you, at that time, I had done a lot of the legwork for the organization. Like there's they have peak seasons of what the queen and her obligations are to the organization. And I had done, at that time, most of like the hard stuff. And so, but like it was coming to the season, and we're like, you kind of reap the benefits of being the queen. And so I lost my crown right before that. And so I remember being so crushed, because I would go to events and I would watch. Well, number one, I had to deal with all the questions, and of course the opinions and the rumors and the things. And I'm one of those people of, I keep quiet, I keep things private, and those who know, and those who don't. So I never really spoke on it, but it would break my heart to feel like, wow, a friend would betray me. And she got to reap the benefits of my hard work. But then also I had to be accountable in that, while I think it's important, to be true to who you are, you never want to be so attached to who you are that you're afraid to evolve, because now in hindsight, some of the things that I was being asked to do make sense. And there are actually things that as a woman, as a lady, I do now. It's just that I think I was just so stubborn, and I just didn't like someone telling me to do it. And I had to own that. And so, while I didn't like how I lost the crown, I think it was definitely a lesson for me about humility and about, I think people say all the time, I'm me, I'm just being me, it's just who I am. And I've had to challenge myself in that, because sometimes you have to ask yourself, is it really just who you are, or who you're choosing to be because you don't want to leave your comfort zone? And that was the case then. And so it's one of those things where God was like, no, don't retaliate to me, because I wanted to drag her. Every time I saw her, I wanted to drag her. Just being honest. Okay, we keep it within my time, say humble, open, and transparent, right? Okay, I wanted to drag the hood girl in me wanted to drag her. Okay, I know I'm a gangster. But God was like, no, don't. So I sat there and I took it. Fast forward some years later, that same young lady, she had a lot of other things happen that were unfortunate in her situation. So again, I tell you all the time, do not mess with me. You can mess with me if you want to. Like, I don't even have to fight anymore. I stopped fighting because when I realized that God goes to bat for me, I stopped fighting completely. And so trust me, she got karma came back and boomeranged her a few times. But the time that I remember the most and what was the most exciting was when I fast forward, so that was my freshman year. My senior year of college, so she had competed for the same crown again. So we were both known for being pageant queens on campus. And so she had competed for Miss the year prior, but she didn't win. However, she was the pageant coordinator the year that I ran. And so, of course, it's interesting because during the practices, she barely gave me any feedback. She was kind of being mean. But it didn't matter because I was just so focused on running my race and trying to win and campaigning and those things. And so, of course, this time I did the same song, Lean on Me. The only thing is that halfway through the song, so this is actually at the pageant, halfway through the song, the music cut off. Mid-performance, the music cut off. And I remember stopping for like a millisecond, like, oh, F. I know you can't say that because it was a praise song, but I was just like, oh, F, that just happened. And I kind of waited for it to come back on, but it never came back on. And so something in me just said, keep dancing. And so I knew the song by heart because I had been dancing to it for years and it was one of my favorite songs. And so I kept dancing. And I will never forget a young lady in the crowd. And it's so funny because this is somebody who I had I won't say a love-hate relationship, but just like some years prior, we had a little scuffle. Not a physical scuffle, but like we had a little disagreement. And so her and I had just gotten back cool. Her name is Brianne Gill. And I don't even know if she knows that I know it was her, but she has a very distinctive voice. And so out of nowhere, mind you, there was no music. It was dead silent because I think everyone was so surprised at the music cut off. But and I kept dancing. Out of nowhere, I hear somebody start to sing the song, and it's Brianne. And then as she started singing it, the whole crowd started to sing the song with her. And it took everything in me not to start crying because, y'all, I was on that stage like, get me out of here. But I kept dancing, and they sang the song all the way to the end. And I was able to finish my performance. And when I finished, the entire crowd got a standing ovation. It was like everything. I ran off the stage. Mind you, they were cheering and they were cheering, but I ran off the stage. I remember one of my best friends, even to this day, was there, and I ran into her arms, and I was just like, oh my God, they ruined it. I was being so dramatic because it was so. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'll be honest, I thought it was my friend from the previous pageant. But of course, to this day, no one knows how it happened. There was even a rumor that I made my own music cut off. Crazy. But I just remember like being mortified. And it was like, I remember she's like, no, it's me. Like, you have to finish the rest of the pageant. Like, keep going, keep going. And so I kept going, but it was so hard. But then I put on, I'm actually wearing them right now. These are my lucky shoes. These are my lucky pageant heels, y'all. These shoes cost me $200. Okay, $200. And I knew exactly what shoe that I wanted to have for a certain outfit. And I'm like, I have to have those shoes. And I scraped every little penny that I could to get these shoes. And so these are actually the shoes, and I've hosted and I've coached pageants since then. And so these are always the shoes that I pull out when I'm practicing and showing my crown and telling the girls all about it. Look how big my face, child. Anyway, mind you, this is also the same time where all of the stuff with the drama with the sorority is happening. So it's almost like, oh my gosh, God, why is this so hard for me? What is going on? And my friend prayed with me, and she's like, Tania, just keep running your race. Keep running your race. I kept going. In the pageant, everything was fine. And then I won again. And that same young lady who took my crown 4 years prior had to give me a bigger one on a bigger stage, bigger platform with more responsibility then. And it's not to brag or to boast, because I never wish any harm on anybody, but I think it proves a couple of things. I think number one, losing that crown was the lesson that I needed to be able to be the queen that I was, to be able to not only receive the bigger crown, but to maintain it. And so I think sometimes we have to realize when we happen to us, and I think it's important that when we happen to us that, you know, you try to take, and even when you don't happen to you, when just bad things happen to you, it's always important that you take the meat with the bones and you try to find the lesson in it, right? This idea that God wastes nothing, right? And that he, you know what I'm saying, he works everything out for our good. Even something that they tried to make a bad thing 4 years prior ended up being a humbling experience. So mind you, I was humbled 4 years prior, and then she was humbled when she had to give me a bigger crown, the crown that she tried to win the year prior, that she didn't win. On top of that, so not only did that make the win even more special, I ended up getting straight 10s in the talent category, and the comments that people left were because of my ability to dance through the music cutting off. And that was nothing but God, because I remember I was almost about to freeze and something in me said, keep dancing. And I always believe that's the Holy Spirit. And so God showed up then. But on top of that, at that same pageant, that the sorority that I was intending on being a part of, they had also put up a different candidate who I beat. And if you remember from a previous episode, I told you about how I was told if I wanted to have any chance to be a part of that organization, I was not supposed to run, but I ran anyway. And so I knew what it meant, and I knew that what winning meant. And so it was bittersweet of me knowing, okay, I can kiss my chances of being a part of that organization goodbye. But then also like I proved them wrong. And I remember my friend, and it's so funny, not funny, but the irony is that one of my friends, we're still friends to this day, but she was a member of that organization. And I always appreciate her. And I think one of the reasons why I know one of the reasons why we're still friends to this day is that in the midst of all that chaos, in the midst of all that drama, I had lost so many friends and so many girls who I thought we were close, end up choosing a different side. But she was the one person who said, organization or not, you are my sister always. And even down to my pageant, she was there for me, and she made sure that they all knew that she was there for me. And I remember she was the very first person or second person to hug me. And she whispered in my ear words I will never forget. And she said, you have nothing else to prove. And I bawled. And I'm sure for other people, they thought they were tears of joy, but it was more like relief, because if people only knew the mental and emotional and even the physical, because I was still working several jobs at that time. Like I want to say 3 or 4 jobs at that time. Like just the battles that I had to, and the obstacles that I had to overcome to be there. It was just like, you just get tired of fighting. It was like one of those, like I needed to breathe. And that was so great and so amazing. Not to mention that same organization from 4 years ago, the fraternity. Turns out that advisor had been embezzling money from them for years. And she ended up getting fired and let go as an advisor. So not only did that boomerang, did God go back, not only did God get the girl who took my crown, not only did he get the organization that denied me the right to membership, he also boomeranged and hit that advisor from 4 years ago and the organization. Mind you, that fraternity was like, when I was the miss or the queen of that organization, they were the top dogs on campus. But by that time, their credibility had changed a lot too. And again, not wishing bad on anybody, but it's really important that you watch. It's like, and they have that saying that, you know, the people that you step on your way up, they'll be the same people that you'll see when you go down. And that is so true. And I'm somebody who can tell you, you know, it's real, right? But in order for that to happen, it's important of going back to, like, you know, vengeance is not mine, of when you take matters into your own hands, when you try to be the person, when you try to be the deliverer of that, you forfeit your right to do that. And so those things only happen because I chose to take a step back and to let God handle it. And I can't say that I've done it all the time, because I haven't. But the times that I did, I can stand on it and say that it was worthwhile. But then also what I could say to that is that I think it's important to realize that, thou must face the music to dance in the rain, right? I think sometimes, especially with social media and especially with just our generation, we have I think somebody compared it to like a camera. We're so used to the iPhone pictures that we forget about the times where pictures actually needed to be in a dark room and needed to undergo a process to come out. And I think sometimes when it comes to success and in achieving our goals and becoming different people and just getting to next, we are expecting it to be as fast as an Instagram photo or as fast as an iPhone photo, when in reality it's as sometimes it could be as long and as tedious as having to go into a dark room. And I think it's important that we don't run from it. I had so many opportunities in those different scenarios to quit, and I wanted to, and in many cases I was on the brink of it. But something about seeing it through, which is actually one of my favorite poems. I actually have it posted on my bulletin board in my office. But I think it's important, to see it through, and that when you face the music, whether that be your past, your trauma, an obstacle, a mountain, a bully, whatever it might be, when you face it, eventually you'll get to a point. Now, I'm a firm believer in it, especially if it's God's will and He put it in your heart. You face that thing, you face the music, and then pretty soon you're dancing in the rain. And over time, as traumatic as all those different incidents were, when I was actually in them, all of them made me in some way tougher and stronger and more resilient and wiser and more humble. And all of them contributed to where I am today. And what's even better is that all of those negative relationships, they have now almost 10 years later, all of them have been remedied. All the people who I couldn't stand in college, some of them are my closest friends. Others, we've grown. They've gone through their own journeys. I've gone through my journey. We've been able to look back on these moments and laugh. And I think that's also the best part. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. And it's important. And everybody wants the crown, especially these days when everybody wants to be an influencer. But it's even more important to realize that you got to hold the crown before you wear it. And everybody's not ready to do that. But if you're willing to hold it, even if you're holding it for somebody else, if you're willing to hold it, when it actually gets put on your head, it's worth it, I promise. Trust me, living testament.